Monticello, on the back of every nickel, there's an engraving of this building. It's a house that was designed and redesigned and built and rebuilt by the OG of government innovation, Thomas Jefferson. A lot of people know Thomas Jefferson wrote the Declaration of Independence. He served as our country's third president. What they don't realize is he was a pioneer for those of us that spend our whole day working on the internet. I went to Monticello last month and had the chance to look at his office, some of the things that he uses. So it turns out he often uses standing desk, long before that became the trendy thing to do. I don't know if anyone else uses one of those. He also wrote letters using a polygraph, and that gave him a BCC copy to himself of over 20,000 letters that he sent. It's pretty cool. But the coolest thing is when he was really trying to research a topic, he had this rotating book holder that allowed him to keep 5 browser tabs open at once. So he could switch between, Google, Facebook, and Twitter really quickly. But a lot of things have changed in the last 200 years. And today, when we think about our interactions with government technology, we don't usually use words like innovation and productivity and efficiency. It's because there's a gap between the technology that we're used to using as everyday citizens and businesses and the technology the government uses. So in DC, I see a lot of federal employees that walk around with 2 phones. They got the BlackBerry that the government issued them that they need to check their email, and then they have a modern smartphone that they also carry that lets them do everything else. And that gap is getting wider, and it's getting wider at an exponential rate. So it's not just about smartphones. The real question is, how long is it until we're all flying around in DeLoreans and the government is chasing us in 4-wheeled Buicks? So this problem, this widening of this gap, why is that happening, and what are some things we can do to solve it? One problem is that we've got really big scalability issues. Right? The country has grown tremendously since it started. The federal government is the world's largest employer. We're the second largest democracy in the world. So getting new people in there isn't going to fix these scalability problems. Right? So check this out. If you look on the left, that's a chart of shows how many messages Congress gets every year, and on the right is their capacity to read them. So it doesn't matter who gets in there. It's too much for them to handle with the current system and the staffing that's in place. Another problem is that the language that we speak in the web world and the language of government is completely different. Right? When they put out a request for proposal, the titles and the acronyms and the language that they use isn't what we're used to speaking in the modern web. So if they need a website, they don't say we need a website. They post that they have an online information retrieval system requirement, or an OIRSR, if you speak in government terms. And that makes it really hard for modern talented web people to match up with the right projects. Another problem they have is that it's really difficult to get started in working with the government. If you've got a small business and you want to just go register, you're in for a big maze. And a whole industry has sprung up around helping small businesses start contracting with the government. That's kind of messed up. One problem that the government does not have, however, is spending money. The problem, though, is that they're paying like it's 1999, and in the last 10 years, costs have come down, but we still see a lot of cases where the government is overpaying by like a factor of 10 just on basic web and email services. So let's look at a little slice of that spending. 23% of all contracts go to small businesses. The government considers you small if you make less than 25 million a year, and any contract that's under 150 grand has a simpler set of regulations and guidelines. So that's what we're targeting with the project I'm working on called RFP-EZ. It's one of the projects in the Presidential Innovation Fellowship. It's a 6-month program, and we're trying to make it so that the government is the easiest client to work with. So that's a big thing to chew off. But I want you to imagine for a minute, if you have a small business, imagine what it might be like to have a really clear and simple way to interact with your clients instead of sending them big, crazy, long proposals. Because it turns out people receiving your proposals, they don't want to read your 60-page PDF anyway. But you only sent that because they gave you a 75-page Word document that was all filled with requirements and things that are messed up. So we want to get rid of all of that. We're building a suite of web-based applications that can get everybody on the same page and communicating in a much easier and clearer fashion. We've got a pilot that's launching in a few weeks. If you work for a small business that does good web work, I hope you'll sign up. But we're just one of 5 projects that are part of the fellowship program. There's also a ton of other initiatives going on to help government. On a local level, you've got things like Code for America Brigade. So I hope you can find some way to get involved, help us narrow that technology gap, and follow Thomas Jefferson, who said, dang, I held it together so good. He said, upon the altar of God, upon the altar of God, I have sworn hostility against every form of tyranny, especially enterprise software.